Okay, so settle with your bolster set up on top of a rolled blanket and then a blanket on top of the bolster. So the blanket on top, it can be in this quarter fold, it could be even higher. But I want you to find your alignment in front of your bolster with your belt in a big loop. We're going to start in a kind of a connected feeling from the ribs to the legs, which might equal core to your mind. But we're going to play quite a bit with some core ideas today. So a massive amount of strength work in the mid body. And we'll see how we can restore into it. So I want you to put the belt overhead so that you have the loop from your, as much to the armpits as you can to the feet. And then you'll be working with this belt in this range for quite a while today in the beginning. We'll be doing some gentle versions of this, but when you tilt back, make sure the belt and kind of play with it. I mean, yoga is a real personal process. I mean, it's crazy individual, right? So you can follow the sequencing, but you find that there's a lot that you might be thinking to create balance for yourself. So my version might not be your version. But when you have this belt around, make sure the loop is big enough that you're a little bit challenged in the stomach, where it might really feel like it bulges, like it's kind of a belly full. And if you tend to stiffen up in that core body, then I would make the belt a little bit bigger of a loop, so you're challenged. And there's tension in the belt, that's the belt parts that are touching both sides, the upper and the lower. Okay, the hands can be down, the hands can be stretched forward out of the shoulders. I can also hold on to my belt, which for me alleviates a little bit of the pressure in my back. So let's spend just moments here where we feel the fluctuation of balance, meaning that you kind of tip a little bit down, and then you redirect your circulation to feel the feet push. Even if the parts of the body with the belt are feeling a little bit of a tension building, it's going to release and make the release feel so much better if we have a little bit of tension to start. So bending your knees, fully bending your knees so the feet lower. And then we'll lower down the heels to the ground. And then I want you to kind of lift the belt up into the inside of the knees, pull the feet towards the groins, the feet together, the soles of the feet together, the knees out, and then tighten up the belt, let it drop down to the back of the pelvis. So you're in Baddha Konasana. You're not quite Supta Baddha Konasana, but you have that pressure of the belt on the top of the feet wrapped around the ankles, and then tidy up your pose here. Get some blocks underneath the legs. And once you lower your spine back, feel that you're comfortable with that spine extension, right? So you're arching your back. And then some waves of the position, you might be changing the block height, you might be loosening the belt, but as you let the spine find its very mild arch, reach the hands together over the chest, interlace the fingers, and turn the hands inside out towards the ceiling. And as the arms have that motion of, just a mild energetic of pressure, I want you to start to feel that you can kind of fan the ribs very lightly by moving your arms back overhead with that interlace still occurring, and the breath motion expanding and centering the abdomen. So when you're moving your arms in extremely slow time back behind you, there'll be a end range, and feel that end range probably in your shoulders. It might lock up a tad, so I would advise you to not go too far back to where one shoulder feels a little more heated than the other. Find a balance. And then bring the arms to simply release the clasp of the hands and feel the arms reach open, and then guide them down. And you can add your sand to your ribs, if you like, so that dividing line between the sternum and the abdomen. So it's a diaphragmatic breath check-in. Or you might let the sand be besides you. You experience the sand is a nice addition to kind of recruiting the breathing muscles to let the mind get centered. So I find the sand bed kind of gets me in my body, centers my tone and focus. So the arms could be resting besides you without too much pressure in the shoulders. They could widen out, so a little farther distant from the mat. So sense the direction that feels the most comforting for you. And sometimes comfort comes in a little more experience of the arms moving a little farther out versus farther in. So once you arrive, land the motion of the inhale and feel that it's a active direction, right? It moves so that the diaphragm shifts down, the breathing muscle lowers down towards the abdomen, and you know it's working well or strengthening when the abdomen resists that tension with the inhale and it relaxes. And then as you exhale, you release the abdomen back. And that could be a little bit of a mystery if you get a little more engaged with the focus on it. But accepting simple movement with your breath. You know, feel like it's moving. And when you're actively in world, you might not be moving emphasis to that movement inside the body. So here we are, massaging the organs with the breath, the inner touch with the breathing, and the arms relaxed. So as we take a few more breaths, you decide if you want to move the blocks lower. Use them in some range. So they could be flat, but you might slide them a little farther out, just below kind of the corner of the knee. And that can feel a different pressure through the adductor lane. It's kind of a funny way to think of it, adductor lane, so that the groin and that circulation and the lymph on the adductors, and then you might even feel just a little part of that area release down. You know, it's usually in kind of high tone most of the day for tension related response to your just living. So feel if you can give the pose a little time to be absorbed with your lymph. Okay, so we'll keep this lymph path, this adductor inner leg lane working in different waves. So if you have sand in your mid body, just shift it away. We're going to use the ball if you have it. If you don't have a ball, I would use a sandbag as your variety of support underneath your side. So you'll unbuckle, and then we'll take the left knee to point up, so the bottom of the foot presses, you know, maybe about 60% of pressure. So it's nothing where it's over stressing your back. So just kind of feel, and you might even wave the knee a little bit out and back up to center. Just kind of feel how the buttock and the inner thigh track movement. This is all going to be focused on pelvic floor and the core and some of these kind of mystery lower abdominal muscles that it's strange to try to get those to relate to strength. I think they're kind of mystery abdominal pathways. Now we'll lift the right foot and cross it to the left knee. That could be a little bit of a swing in your low back. So take a pause here where the knee is motioned open. It kind of locks into its position. If you have a ball, you put it to the outside of that left hip. If you don't, you could use a block actually, or you could put a sandbag right beside your left hip. So you have something so you don't drop off on the side. Your leg doesn't drop over. So you're going to shift your weight on that left foot. So you lean your body weight so that right leg tilts over towards the left. You're on the outside of that left foot. That's important. So avoid efforting too much with your foot. And then hold the right knee. Actually, the sandbag works pretty good. Anything that's a structure that you can kind of push into it. The block is a little more tricky because it doesn't have a responsive surface. Okay, so hold on to that right knee, and then maybe the shoulder on that right side can stay moving back and down. Now, if we could live in that direction, resting back to the bolster. Okay, feel where the breath wave might glide smooth and might grip up when you notice intensity in one spot of the body. So your work is on kind of studying and releasing, even if the release is just via breathing. That's probably our first release anyway. Okay, now if you're holding onto the knee and you feel that there's a part pulling it a little towards you and a part of moving it over towards the left, see if you can have the focal point of that hold onto the knee to be moving it towards the left, right? So there's not as much grip on the knee cap. It could be a little bit below the actual feeling of the bone of the knee. So it's kind of on that lower, well, not quite low on the outer side of the right lower leg, but just below the knee region. If you kind of squeeze that area, it likes to be massaged a bit. And then if your head is kind of lifting or tilting, bring it back to the blanket. And then as we switch, I just slide my right hand down towards that right ankle. Then I help that leg path come back in and uncross. And then when you take that moment to get to the second side, give yourself a little bit of time to feel the bottom of that right foot, push into the foot, and then feel the tailbone rest back towards the bolster, lift up the left foot, and then cross it. And if you cross it and then tension really holds up at the top of the left hip, that's what we're trying to produce, is where all the circulation drains down from the knee to the hip. So you should feel it kind of bunch up in the left upper thigh. And then moving the ball or the sand to the outer right hip. And then let the body weight kind of tilt to that right side, the lower weight. So your upper body, right, it stays glued to the bolster. You stay connected. And if that length of the spine actually feels like it's kind of squirming a little bit and twisting, you know that you have a little work to do to kind of commit your back to being supported. Just let the spine stay lengthening and hold on to that left knee with the right hand. Left arm can be passive. If you like active, you can reach it back besides your head. And I'm trying to keep this kind of, as much as I can relate this groin, pelvic floor, a little bit of that focus here. My hope is that the class content will give you some feeling of real connectedness and solid support moving from the mid-body to the extremities. Time will tell. Okay, so when you're holding onto that left knee, see if you can guide that leg towards the right. We'll pick up the program a little quicker on this side, knowing the direction. And if there's places that are kind of feeling yanked into, like the upper leg, be sure you're on the outside of that right foot. So you're tipped on the outside, so you sickled the foot, the right lower leg. Good. And then resting your eyes. even if it's moments. The parts of the left hip might feel like they're getting kind of pried. The ligaments, a little bit of movement. Breathing slow. Now, as you start to guide your focus into outer leg, you'll slide the right hand off that left knee, and you might even kind of massage down just below the knee as you guide your hand down to the ground and bring the leg back center, and we'll windshield wiper. So we uncross through the left foot. Who knows, maybe you got props kind of stuck to you, but push them a little bit away. Your spine may have slid down. So find what is, wherever you happen to be with your body touching back to the bolster, scoot the feet down so they're a little wider than hips distance. Probably not right to the edge of your sticky mat, that might be too much. But when you tilt the knees side to side, you'll begin this pattern of kind of feeling connection into the waist motion, okay? And we're all experienced with this pattern, so and it'll be a little different today how we thread them. But in general, we're curious, about the body's ability to release holding patterns. So as the knees tilt side to side, I know it's nice to have a bolster under you, but we're going to be shifting so that what's behind you is going to be just the air above. So what you'll do is you're going to shift your body weight any which way. It could be right, it could be left. If you always tilt towards the screen, maybe you go to the right this time. And then you turn so that you're in table pose. This is the beauty of not being in a studio at this moment, because we can kind of go any direction. No one will get super confused, but you can kind of see my details. So I'm turning to face back to my bolster, and I'm sliding one of my blankets back under my knees. And so you might be turned the other way. Instructions will be extremely simple, but as the hands lower down, now the back is open towards the ceiling versus the back on the bolster. And I want you just to blend the motion of cat-cow. So toes can be under or they can be relaxed, which means the top of the foot is stretching gently. So alternate between cat-cow, and then maybe you wag your tail a little bit side to side. You decide. And you recall when we did windshield wiper, is that moving the hips side to side, or is it's I think isolating your hips so they're not moving side to side. It's only the legs. So right now we're moving above the legs, so the legs are kind of locked. Right? They're not able to shift. Okay, now next time you come back to what you think might be neutral crawling setup, we'll lift up the knees and we'll kind of push the position of weight into the ball of the feet and alternate bending one knee at a time fairly actively, although the knees aren't trying to get to the blanket whatsoever, but you're alternating the movement of the knee and the calf, right? So when one knee bends, the other calf descends. That's the basic instruction right there, isn't it? Although it could be charged up, right? Your calf might be congested or feel kind of stuffy. So feel when the knee alternates its bend. And I want you to get the feel of now down dog. So you are exuding quite a bit of strength and firmness. So you push the floor away, you firm up the arms, and the legs could be firm or they could be a little bit bendy. You choose. If your head is lower down and you're close to the bolster, perfect, just let it rest there. But I don't want you to be trying to arch your neck and looking too much. I mean, if you can possibly keep the arms pushing so the spine lengthens, and your legs might be bending this whole time. So get a feel of the sitting bones reaching back Okay, let's get the spine long and dangly. So we'll walk our hands back to our feet. Uttanasana. Feel the base of the feet kind of roll back to the heel. And then as the foot imprint is centering on each foot, let your head nod down. And however your arms end up, which might be kind of in a stray state of reaching, they might be feeling better holding the elbows. That can be a nice traction capacity for the back muscles. And the sitting bones are trying to reach back, not necessarily just up, but reaching them back. Good. Find a balance of the in and the out breath. Let your head go. You know, as your arms release down from the elbows, or if they're dangling forward, bring them back to grounding and walk your hands forward in towards hands and knees. Okay, and now what we'll do is we're gonna actually, let's do a little up dog. So lean down into that bolster because it's already there for your legs, for your front body. And your arms could be passive, right? You could lower down all the way to the bolster, put your elbows on the other side of the blanket and be here pushing into your hands. This is kind of nice. It doesn't put as much pressure on my wrists, but I am using my kind of core bind to hold the extension of my spine. Yeah, and don't overdo that hand pressure. So if your hands are back here, you might bring them forward for the next few moments. So there's quite a bit of tone into the back. Okay, slide your hands back, reach the heart forward. Okay, and then continue that feel of reach. And then I want you to basically slide back so that you can turn your bolster across, unroll the blanket at the back, and then take your blanket, your other one next to your knees, to the other side on the other blanket. And then you'll start getting into side sage. And give yourself some kind of awareness leads here. So if you put your block over the other side of the blankets, if you never use a block for this reach, then don't bother, right? But if you do like that, what you'll take is a ball on the inside of the right leg or nothing, okay? It's a ball or nothing on that option. And then your sand is going to lead the sensation of the stretch for your side. The side stretch is likely going to leak into your spine circulation, which is so nice. So if you keep that reach going with your right arm, it could be open. It could be over towards the block and touch the block and rest your hand onto it. And you also can decide the settling of your left leg, meaning bending that knee as much as you're feeling comfortable with it. And you might even sort out how far your left foot is from the left inner thigh. Maybe you kind of scoot that foot out so it's a real hinged position with your knee. And so observing that one might not be helpful, just feeling your way into the relative connection of you being on your side and using the props to support you. Right, feeling the ribs move with the breath. And make sure that right arm ends up in a place that you can relax a bit. So if your arm overhead is causing engagement in the hub of the shoulder hub, in the rotator cuff, you might find that it's not going to be useful after a minute, right? It could be overdoing it, overstress. So we focus on simply that rib articulation on the side. It could feel fairly mild. It's not like 100% rib articulation, but it's a relaxed rib expansion, not stressful. Strengthening the lungs, which takes time and practice. Goes with the arm overhead. We're going to move our right arm down. And we'll take a horizontal chest opener. So we keep the props just like this. You don't have to change the block overhead even. You just leave it. And then you let the sand slough off and bring the right knee towards the left. It doesn't have to feel complete connection. And likely for safety with your neck, you'll turn down to that bolster with your right hand and push into the bolster to come up, and then pivot so that you're sitting down in front of the bolster, right? So now you're back to kind of square one, isn't it? But this time when you lower back, you have this horizontal chest opener, so the ribs, they can't range this far, but scoot your hips a little down, lower your head back to the blanket. Now, if this is a little bit intense in your back, you can always add a block under your pelvis, or you can make this blanket stack under your head a little bit higher. That's kind of a nice option. I mean, you could reach back to your block and really work with the ribs. So you can kind of get into the rib awareness, but we'll keep it simple with the feet. So the feet are still close towards your center of gravity. They're not sliding down. Unless you want quite the stretch in your mid body, you could stretch your thighs down. That's a nice elongation. And you could stay with the knees bent. And I can feel a benefit to either wave. Anything that we do that's different than your daily habit is probably just a benefit. So if this is a habit, right, with the knees bent, then go down with the legs, or use a block under the pelvis if it's too much detail in your back. Arms could be open. This seems to be the regular horizontal chest opener as the arms are out. And let the ribs kind of load this definition for a few more moments. Of course, you can add sand to your ribs. You might like to coordinate simplicity here into your rhythm. So a little sand here and there. And then as the shoulders are motioning back, it's a wide expansion through the ribs, but like I mentioned, it takes time and practice to get stronger here. And there's areas in the ribs that we keep working into and maybe relax or focus higher up. And that's probably better for a class because most of the time we spend a lot of our breath up high in the chest. So in the restorative practice, we're here and the ribs are lower with the breath. We're not trying to tighten up the heart and the clavicle and the neck. So try to let your breath feel ribs and below. And then at your own timing, you'll go to side sage on the right hip. You might want to stay here a little longer. Just kind of entertain the heart opening. But it feels nice sometimes. And sometimes it doesn't. So however that time is for you to move to side sage, you feel the windshield wiper pattern of the knees. If you had a block under your pelvis, you'll slide it out. And then you'll join this motion, this rotation, and feel the ribs kind of doing the pressure. I know we're used to using our arms to push ourselves around all the time. So kind of feel your ribs doing a little pushing. And then, of course, you'll assign your arm to help you be supported. But as you feel that range, make sure the blanket is about equal of your first side. Okay. And then reach the left arm. Yeah. If I turn towards my back when I reach, it seems like, wow, I've got a greater range of motion on this side, but it's only because I roll in my back a bit. So for most of us when we're on our back, especially this group that's done reclining twists before, you're probably progressing in an interesting way with your rib cage, right? When you're on your back, you have a little bit more flexibility in that tundra, but when you're on your side, you got to work with your shoulder differently. So, feel when you lean into your right hip. And then I forgot my sand on this one. Huh? Sand is part of the side sage. Okay, even if it stays on your hip, you could have it across your hip. You can have it on your side. I guess that means you decide. Relax the eyes, the mind. And get the feel of that right side of the spine, which is the lower side, connected to feeling the right knee bending, and that does stretch that right side of the spine and maybe the pelvis. It might be a pretty minor pelvic stretch. Okay, left arm could be overhead, it could be down on the bolster, just kind of crossed at the chest. This is kind of nice too. And then I can focus on leaning onto the right side of my head. And even practicing resting. That's okay. Okay, now let's slide the sand off with your arm so that you're in a position you can do that. Keep it, nearby. We're going to test if the sandbag will be part of what's coming up. We'll see. But you'll start to roll now to the right. So you're going to come up so that you can move your bolster to the side of your mat. Any side is fine. And then as you take one of the blankets off, take a blanket, unfold the blanket so that it's bigger than a quarter fold. So you're going to come around to the knees on the blanket. We're actually going to be on our belly, but I want you to kind of sample this. I can't have these in your way. Gotta get these out of the field of vision here. So, the blanket could be this. It could also be all the way forward. So you have a big space for your core to land on. And I'm going to work with mine in like a square, just kind of see how that goes. Don't worry about kind of tripping on it with your feet because we won't be doing that kind of action. So you'll be safe with it either way. It depends on what you're comfortable with on your belly, but your knees need to be to the back so that hopefully, I suppose it's a distance change for each of us with our length. So if you're tall, maybe you want your blanket leg all the way out because I want your belly to be on the blanket. So we're going to come down onto our belly. I'm going to join everybody with that idea, just so we're all kind of on the same page with this focus. You're not going to use the mat for traction. So if you don't have the sticky mat under your arms, you can't spend energy on that. But what you'll do is you're going to kind of drag the sandbag. I think everybody here has a sandbag, pretty sure. So if you don't have a sandbag, you can still do the practice that we're working through with or without. But the sandbag is on if there's a little bit of a pocket here that your sandbag, maybe, I don't mean your clothes has a pocket, but your body contour has a little bit of a spot that kind of lands into a curve, is really the focus. Now, once I'm here and I put my elbows down, so they're not quite perfectly on the blanket for me, but again, we're learning core stuff, pelvic floor. My feet spread out a little wider on the mat, so I have kind of this wide stance with my feet. And as the pelvis presses down, this is a little bit of pressure, so you do want your blanket and your elbows press, you can feel your breathing muscles respond here, your diaphragm, and you're in Sphinx pose. So some of us think of this as this forearm pressure. We're not going to do any forearm plank right now, but it'll be equal to that in strength work because of the sand. So the sandbag's going to put more pressure on the pelvis. I'm aware of that. So when you feel that sandbag kind of press things a little bit outwards, I want you to then lift up your head. So you lift your chin up, inhale, and then exhale, let your head tilt down so your chin goes towards your chest. If your hands start to slide towards each other, make sure they're apart, like they have a spacer between them. So the hands are shoulder width. Inhale, lift the chin up. And if you can exhale here, chin draws in towards the chest. Good. Okay, now, happy moment here. Elbows open out. And you can make a little hand pillow for your head. And then once you're lowered down, I'll be turning my head so that you can hear me, so I'm not just talking into my hands. But get a feel when your head is onto your hands, the movement of the abdomen. And it's kind of this, this interesting diamond shape of awareness in your, from the pelvis, and then kind of moving up into the ribs, right where the ribs are pressing into the floor at the top of that, the part of the cage you feel, which is connected to your thoracic vertebrae. And focus on that expansion. I know the massage with the floor against you can be a little bit impactful. So you don't want to attend class when you got a full belly on these kind of poses, huh? They're good massagers for the abdominal organs and also the muscles. Okay, so we'll keep the sand on there. All right, now with your head onto your hands, lift up your, keep the knees bending, of course, but you're going to lift up the left foot. So bend at the knee so the foot lifts up and draws towards your buttock. And then change the side so that foot goes down and then you switch. So just with the knee bending, not trying to lift a leg up by itself. That's kind of the advanced stage of the work. We're going to just do the bending work. So alternate and then let both knees bend. That's where we really want to end up. And then get a feel of both knees bending. And I'm sure when your head is down, your buttocks can stay relaxed. But once you start to lift up your head, which I want you to work towards is lifting up your head, elbows are still pressing down. Feet are relaxed, they're not trying to flex or point, but you're working with that core strength, and then let the feet release back down. Press into your hands, lift up just a tiny bit. So it's even like Cobra pose. You're not pushing all the way up. And then slide your sand away. And then once that sand is gone, slide your hands back so that your thumbs can almost lift and tickle your armpits. Elbows by the sides, really strong in the upper back. And then feel, with no sand on your back now, your feet get a little bit closer and a little bit closer. Almost, hips distance here for certain. And then chin towards chest. Keep the chin towards the chest. Push into your hands open on the blanket. And then come into almost an up dog, but then sweep your hips back to table. Pull your blanket in so that you can make a quarter fold. All the way to the quarter fold again. Knees up on the blanket. And then hands are open on the mat, so wide out. And then hips reaching down. Chest lifts to up dog. Should feel a little easier in your spine. And then come back to reaching your hips back towards the feet, but not all of us can do child's pose, so don't force it. And then curl through, so you're going to work back to that up dog, round the spine, push down to your hands, arch through the front of the spine. All right, and then lower your head. And I want you to take one more of those motions. So feel when you reach your hips back to kind of prepare to pounce here through your spine. Hands are open, wide on the mat. Now round your back so your chin is towards your chest. Hands are open, arms are straight. And then as you feel the hips start to sink downwards, I want you to let that spine wave move towards the front of the spine, and then you let your head just lift comfortably, however it is for you. I think it takes time to get our back comfortable with these motions. So next time you find table, take a block under each hand. Maybe the blocks could be the mid-height. For some of us, we could go low, but I can hold my block easier when it's like at the second setting. That's a good block grasp. And then bring the right foot to step between, or somewhat between. It might be closer to the right block, but as you feel that lunge to the left thigh, work so the left quadricep, the front of this left thigh, into the hip flexor is stretching. I know some of us will find the blanket is not going to help the knee feel settled. Some of us might lift our knee up off the blanket. So you find what range for that hip is useful for you to stretch to the front of that left thigh. So up and towards the hip flexor to the core. Okay. And then let's step the right foot back and take our blocks flat. Under hands, of course. Stretch forward so both hips reach down. Now, if you can let your toes hook under and lift up the knees, then you have no knee compression, but you certainly get back work. Then lower the knees, very brief. Shift your hips to table, so you want to feel kind of neutral with the back muscles. Bring the right knee into center, and then as you step the left foot forward, get the block a little higher so that range is, it's not perfect movement for our back to stretch our leg forward. If you even can get it there, right, without using your hand, give yourself a round of applause, because as the leg moves forward, the knee is just above the ankle, not over the toes. And work on that territory of range of motion through the right thigh. So some of you might have your toes under on the right foot and the knee is up. Some might have the knee down. Probably a 50-50 on that one, depending on how the reaction is in your knee. Okay, so kind of stage this so the range of reach for your back thigh is on a low lunge. Okay, now we're going to keep our left foot forward. We're going to shift our weight now. So we're going to get our bolster underneath us. So I want you to grab a hold of that. And as awkward as it can sometimes be to get this reset, your bolster's under you now. And you'll walk your left foot toe heels to the right side. We only got one heel on that one, but toes and heel. So you come around to sitting on your bolster. Okay, and let's set this so that it'll be easeful for you to see. So I want you to just have a seat on the bolster. It's kind of centered, basically. Right leg is straight, and left leg is lifted, crossed over the right leg. Okay, so these are variations on Marichyasana. So the lift of this left knee for this version is probably going to pull your hip a bit. So I want you to kind of feel when you hold on to that left, just below the knee, and get a little grasp on that. And the left foot, it's probably not perfectly parallel. I mean, let's get real. You know, we're crossing the foot over. I mean, how can you force the ankle to stay that way? So you do the best you can though to kind of pin the right leg with your left foot. So this leg is crossed over the right leg, and it's kind of pinning into my right leg. So this hopefully creates strength in my mid-body. Okay. I mean, I don't feel very strong in my lower belly in this position, but I know that if I hold my leg, I can sit better. Yeah? So I'm up. Bring the left hand back. If you need some props behind you, grab a hold of a block so you have a little height. Left hand onto the blanket. Right elbow crosses the left leg and you're rotating. Okay. Yep. You have that awareness. So feel where that left foot is down. The right foot is flexed. Maybe not overdone, but you can feel the direction of the right foot, toes up. And then when you're pushing with that right arm into the left leg, feel that cross section into your upper back. Yeah, I know each time we practice, we're shifting it around quite a bit the last month or so. So kind of hold the focus for the moment, not knowing what to compare this with probably. But when you feel the arm to that left leg, you want to push and then feel where the spine is lifting. Okay, now come back forward, hand onto that left knee, and we'll help the leg along. We'll lift it and we'll put the left inside of the bottom of the left foot on that right leg. So I'm going to push my right thigh open. Hands on my bolster, kind of reset myself. So now I'm seated in kind of a half wide angle. I mean, they're both in an angle, opening my knees. But at this position, I have my sandbag on my left thigh. Some of you might want something under your left knee, like a blanket or a ball. Blanket's actually a good prop for this one under my leg, because it's completely mushable. Yeah, I make it cozy that way. So you have anything you want under your left knee or nothing. And then get a belt and hold on. Just kind of a mini motion here with the belt reaching. I want you to get the arms so they move up. Only the up that gives you some mid-body up. Okay, meaning it's not about pulling my arms and proving a point in my shoulders. It's to catch that focus of sitting up tall. I'm kind of hoping my belt helps me here a little bit. Okay, bend your right knee so your foot slides in, and then reach your belt under your right foot and pull the belt so the leg stretches out, and you hold onto the belt with your right hand. And then as you reach out with that right foot to about 2 o'clock on the right hand side, so try to move the leg a little bit out. And then kind of remember that lift of the rib cage. All right, and then you'll bend your right elbow. So the elbow's found on the outside of that right leg. Slide your right hand down on the belt and then turn to your left. So the waist turns. There's nothing the waist gets to touch onto. Put your left arm close behind your back and probably less overstretch here than if possible. So I hold onto the foot and I kind of feel that vigorous pull of the ankle, the underside of the foot, the calf. And then you can certainly turn your head down towards that right leg, but feel this kind of side flesh and that leaning. I know you got to be careful not to overdo this one, not to kind of yank yourself into oblivion with the spine here. You have to be a little cautious of back pressure. Okay, and then slide your right hand back towards the top of the right thigh. And then pull on the belt so that you're going to push with the right foot, pull with the right hand, and move your right leg straight in front of your right hip. And then get both hands holding the belt. Okay, so this isn't random sequencing, but I want you to get a feel that you've gone from the side tilt. Now you're kind of redirecting the hip and the spine. So you can do door number 1 where your leg stays down. And door number 2, you're going to first bend the right knee, slide the foot in. So you're careful about your spine strength. And then you got to really pin those elbows towards your side and then lift up the foot and then maybe straighten the leg. So you have to be just careful how the spine adapts. I know the left leg, it's good to have that sandbag on it because otherwise your pelvis might pop up. Probably not, but at least the leg will pop up. So pulling, or maybe your leg stays down. This is good. I like this version. will eventually bring them down anyway. So those that have the leg up, get a feel here where the flexing is at the foot. There you go. So if you get your hands to reach farther to the foot, of course the hamstring might get a little more involved. Maybe not though for some of us. It might feel like it's no different than if the hands are close. But I want you to get the feel of moving from your sitting bone, your right sitting bone to your right heel bone. Okay, and then slide your hands in on the belt so the foot comes down. And then you get that left leg to join. Take the sand off the left thigh. Bring your left foot forward, down on the floor, into the belt. No boat pose with the bolster under your seat. That would be cruel. So we hold on to the balls of the feet here with the belt across. And it might be closer to your arch. You know, you could just find where it feels like it kind of holds the feet side by side. And with that spine lifting, extending, I want you to pull forward like you would in a standing forward bend. So you're going to reach your hands down towards your feet, find where they can connect comfortably. If your knees are having trouble staying with a very mild micro bend, you might be better off with a little sandbag under your legs. Even if we're only here for a minute, you probably will find that some of us will hyperextend. Some of us might hyperextend and we can't help it. It just happens. So if that's going to occur, I'm going to put my sand down under my calves a little bit more than under my knees, and then pull and keep reaching forward. Yeah, breathe in and then move forward. Give it just a few more moments. Okay, now when you're reaching forward, let the back lengthen, but also feel kind of the pit of the abdomen trying to reach forward. Okay, so you're reaching forward with the chest. Okay, now keep that awareness kind of moving through the mystery body, the mid body. And you want to get a good pull on the belt. So you're pulling so you can feel your calves. And then just let go of the belt. Hands at the very top of the thigh, so it kind of feels like it's meeting thigh towards the hip. And then pressing a little bit, lifting. Take the sand out if you have it. And then we'll bring the right foot up, cross it over the left. And then turn to the right, bring the left arm to the outside of that right leg and rotate. So maintain that spine, natural curvature. So it might feel like it's mid-spine or the back shoulder blade layer. And, you know, be a little creative with that shoulder blading. So you're turning and maybe your eyes relax so that you can go inside a bit with the focus. That usually works. That's one way to go inside. Don't look outside. Okay. So when you're turning the back muscles, and then the left foot flexes. If you let that left foot get kind of limp, it takes some of the intrigue out of the position for your mid body. Kind of make flat, it makes the pose a little flat. So try to flex the left foot. You know, unwind. And I think this side we can have kind of an easier grouping of it. We just bring the right foot to the inside of the left leg. We kind of get our belt ready. Left foot out. And then we add that sand to the right upper inner leg. And you might have a lot of props that you're getting kind of twisted into here, but first things first, sand on leg, left leg out to about 11 o'clock. And then I get my blanket, that I like that, or you can use a ball. And then this time we'll go right into the lean. So I want you to bend your left knee so you can get a reach of the pelvis centering down on the bolster. And as the belt goes under that left foot, push out, and maybe you go to 10 o'clock, maybe you go to 11, but maybe steer on the sense of what is the spine, reaching into the leg supported. And then place the belt so it touches together and reach for the belt with your left hand and then navel forward. Okay. And then you're going to bend that left arm and you're going to tilt down, but you'll be very cautious, I hope, how your thoracic spine kind of pushes here. So, our thoracic is the twisters, right? The vertebrae in that middle are connected to the ribs, and so thus they twist well. So feel that enhanced ability to breathe and kind of rotate. And you're in midair with the rotation. You're not touching a bolster with your ribs, so it's certainly a little more tricky. So less is more here. Be gentle. And then maybe your head turns a little to the right. Maybe that doesn't work good for your sensation, so you look down to that left leg. This feels good to me because I can feel my right lower side of the waist, the QL. It's kind of a supportive anchor with my sandbag, and then it gets a little bit of a workout in the waist. Okay, so we're going to slide the left hand in. Got a little bit to get to here, so let's truck along. Bring the left foot forward. Yeah, your second side, you might already have a little bit of a gain in, right, noticing where you're going to go with it. So I'm just going to lift up the leg because it felt comfortable to do so. But you might have your left foot down, the heels on the ground, and be here with your spine in its natural arches. And then you could go back up maybe. You could keep it up and walk the hands down towards the foot. I think that when you reach to that leg sensation farther down the belt, it might even feel like the sensation moves to your right thigh as well, the right inner leg. Okay, but pull. So we're going to get a pretty decent amount of inversion after this. So I want you to just notice, even by closing your eyes, all the kind of random areas of pulling and tugging and releasing and gripping. I mean, there's all these kinds of patterns in your hip, in your back, or your legs. And when we started, we focused on that connected feeling. Now let's land it. So we'll bend the left knee. If you have the foot down, you're already there. And lower down the left heel and then take the belt off. Okay? And let's bring our right knee to point up and our hips to center, so our knees point up. If you've got your one blanket behind you, just leave it with that, but maybe kind of push it back. You'll get it back there once you're on your head is down. And then move your hips center on your bolster, so the back of the pelvis moves forward, so you almost are like ready to sit in front of the bolster. And then you'll lower onto your back, head is on the blanket. Get that in there so it covers the support of the back of the skull down to the skin of the neck. Okay? And then you're going to get your sandy feet on. So when you bring your knees in, you'll lift up your sand across the bottoms of the feet. And you'll take some time to just get yourself organized with your clothes and such. But you want to find that this really plugs into helping your knees today. This is just because sometimes when I'm studying this or working and talking to someone about it, that we kind of notice, depending on if you're working with knee health, this could be one of the top ones for working around supporting the knees, the density. It has that opposite gravitational pull on your knee anyways. So it's pretty smart to practice this just in general for so many reasons, isn't it? It's kind of a gold pose. So whether it's you're at the wall or you're in the middle of the room. So flex through your feet. Okay, the knees have some space. And the arms flow back and bending to cactus. Now, if this is a feel with the arms this way, that's too much. You can always slide the arms a little bit down and just get a feel of the bend of the arms that works through your shoulders. So individual. And the arms are probably an area that you might want to just kind of fuss a bit with, feeling how your shoulders are back, feel how your blanket supports you. Maybe you're one that likes to kind of roll the blanket at the neck and have this little bit of length, actually trying to get a little more of that at the neck. Most of us have a pretty easy time getting that neck lengthened, the back of it with our habits. So it's like going the other direction is a little bit awkward, getting your arch back. So if it feels slightly tender in the shoulder to have the neck this way, work on the ribs movement with the breath, opening the chest. If your eyes aren't closed, resting the eyes. Reversing the effects of gravity on the heart and the lungs. You know, there's much that does build up a little bit of pressure, right? At the very top of the thigh, the seam is where there's, you know, the flow, the fluid flow is going there. Even though there's a, you know, a discussion about it that it goes into this, you know, pool of the belly, the waterfall pose, this can be called often, but it does feel like there's a little, it sticks into the hip a bit. Just be realistic on where the movement flows. I mean, waterfall sounds nice, but there are some connectors in the muscles that are obviously touching into it. So feel the legs in their vertical pattern, so they're lifted. They're not trying to flow back overhead. So I want you to bend your knees, and most of us probably end up with one sand on this one. So it's not too hard to do a leg press. Hopefully not. So you feel your knees bend and the thighs are moving towards the ribs. Okay, try to give that a moment where you get the back muscles of the legs active. And then you take the sand away. You might have to really get a little more knee bend, or maybe you toss your sand to the side. But add a block or a ball, you know, kind of whatever's there is probably better. Just anything that is a narrow, you know, width. You don't want the block to be turned to the mid width, but either block or ball, and accept whatever you find, you know, it's fine. And then go side to side. So now the hips that we got all the heat into just a moment ago with the sand on the feet, the circulation pulls to the hip. Let your knees kind of just gradually kind of saunter side to side, and then feeling that pulley system from that middle of your back through the hip, going very slow. Okay. If your knees kind of scoop over when they go over kind of towards your arm, just notice that, you know, if that's something that you have a habit of doing because it feels more length in your back, that's okay. But you know, we're going to eventually get the knees that go straight over to the side to help the hips. So feel if your legs could be kind of right in that center track, vertical up with the knees, as much as you can tell. Okay, now we'll keep the block or the ball and come back to center. Knees to chest. Now we're moving them in. Just if it's a block, just make sure your legs can hold on to it. So it doesn't fall on you. And then as you bring your knees to your chest, you're going to scoot the bolster down towards kind of the base of your mat, right? You push it downwards. And then your feet are on the bolster. Now, whether you like bridge pose with bolsters or not, there's certainly some who don't prefer that. But one reasoning is that we get higher up on the spine when we lift the hips because our feet are out, kind of realistic. So you can go with or without the bolster. If you don't like to use it, just push it down farther away. But once we push down to the floor of the bolster, we lift the hips up, and then we kind of notice the neck. And it goes all the way up, right? And so your neck gets a little bit of a bulge. So you might slide your blanket back, or if you can't stand being without something under your head, you just make the blanket a little bit lower. That's pretty much a given helper. I like something, I just don't want that much, so my neck is pushing to stretch further. Now as the hips go up, then your arms go overhead, and breathe. And then exhale, lower the spine down. Okay, we're gonna do about 3 more of those at your own pace. So lift and lower, drawbridge. Feel the concentration both under your feet or pushing to the floor. And also that leg layer of connection into the object between, right? The block or the ball. You know, your challenge is probably to make the movement smooth. And recently when we were on hands and then the front of the body on the ground, you know, that was one way to start to build this strength here in the mid body. Okay, so next time you come down, you're gonna bring your knees in. If you have a block, you need to remove it because you need 2. So you're gonna get a block, and maybe you have 3, I don't know. But when you lift your hips up, you're gonna put 2 blocks mid-height, so second setting, and you'll push the blocks in together, and then you'll settle. And I like to kind of, even though I know like pulling my pant that direction, it's like you're trying to nudge your thumb into that back flesh to kind of lengthen the back of the body, not just the buttock, but also the whole low back. You want that to be give it permission to swoop under you, kind of scoop under you, tail under. And then once my feet are still on my bolster, I kind of like the feet on the bolster for this energetic right now. It's the energetic inversion. If you stretch your legs down, some of you might really appreciate that for the hip flexor stretch. But regardless, the arms are down by the sides, the shoulders roll down and in, and the chest open. Okay, now if you kind of roll one shoulder down and then it slides out, focus on getting the elbows to roll in or down and under. So it's like this kind of rotating chest open. It's hard to get the shoulders under you. I know it's not an easy feat. So if having your knees bent is better for you to try to work the chest opening, stay with that, even if it looks like you're doing, but you feel like it's not as advanced. Okay, now there's a lot of arch in the spine for either of those pose patterns. So maybe you're comfy with it, but feel the belly move with the breath. Now one hand might be more relaxed than the other. You know, you've probably got one hand that's kind of gripped together from daily movement with the dominant hand. So it might have a harder time just relaxing. So let's commit to that a little bit through the final part of class about the hands resting and trying to give, especially your dominant hand, if the wiring in that arm is just tense, try to open that chest and then push down into your feet. If your legs are straight, bend the knees, lift up the hips, feel the tail move towards your feet, and then slide the blocks out. You can kind of play with just get the blocks out, lower the spine. And once the spine is making its way down, all the way. Okay, you want to have, if you have a ball, you want to use that here coming up. So let's bring the knees. Well, we'll bring the bolster to the right side first. So I'm going to shift my bolster to the right side of my mat. And I tend to encourage you to use a blanket on top of that bolster if you like that height. If it's real easy for you to do a crossover, don't. But place the ball between the knees to start here. And then if you have your blanket kind of flat now, you're going to bring it back to that quarter fold. And then squeeze in. If you've got a block only, then use a block and squeeze into that. Your feet are off the ground. Right, so you've got this little mild tilt in your spine. Squeeze in, the knees stay bending. They don't fling up, or the feet don't fling up. Okay. Now, as you squeeze in, you're going to lower your feet so they hover above the ground. Who knows if they're hovering or they're lifted quite a bit, but use that arch in your spine and your core to really work here. And then you're going to bring your knees back in towards your chest happily. You don't have to be happy, but try to bring it in. It'll be comfortable for your back. Stretch the right leg down, remove the ball, and then, or the block, and cross the left leg over to the bolster. Feel like you're kind of, the bolster is almost in your way. It's so close. It's like, ugh. Just kind of feel that it's close. And then you can kind of wriggle your way to a little more happiness here. So I put the ball at the sacrum area. Might be a little bit lower than the sacrum for some of you. Kind of at the gluteal fold is okay too. It doesn't have to be higher up. All right, and then add your sand as you please. So the sand goes to the outer left leg, and that left arm opens. Right, the wrist relaxes, the head turns to the left. And now feel where the muscles in the pelvis, what you know of them, are relaxed, right? So you're not trying to squeeze or push anything in the legs. You're just letting the flexibility exist in your spine and your hip. That's it. Yeah, if your left foot's not quite relaxed here, you might be taking a little bit of time. Your foot might be a little off the bolster. Your right hand could be resting on your core so you can feel the breath in your hands, or resting on the ground. Deep, slow inhale. And then exhale completely. Now, when you come back with your head back center, if it was turned, slide any sand off, and then bring that right leg to slide in. So you're going to roll onto your back, both knees bending, and block or ball between, and then squeeze into it. Just let the feet be up. They don't have to hover or lower down. So your hip flexors feel a little more competent with it. And settle in so that your knees squeeze in. You know, the ball's nice because it, is responding. It would be hard to put a sandbag between that. It is a responsive surface, but that would be a bit of a workout. And move your bolster to the left side, final spinal here. And really work on squeezing. Lower your feet all the way to the floor. Squeeze in. Okay. Lift the feet just a little bit above the ground. Hover. Squeeze in. And then knees to chest. Take the ball. Let the left leg lower down. And then cross the right leg over to the bolster and add a ball. If you don't have a ball, don't worry about it. It's not required, but it's just an anchor here. And then add your sand to the exterior right leg on this side. And then when you motion your spine, even though you feel like this is hip, it's waist, but you're in a spinal twist. I think by the experience you've had, this doesn't feel as aggressive of a spinal rotation, but for some it's quite a workout to get the spine. But now that it may feel a little more supple for you, to lay on your back and let a knee cross over and the shoulder release down, it's a decent accomplishment for your hydration of your back. So let the body kind of soak in and absorb that nourishment into the spine. And then on the sides of the spine, the paraspinals. So in some ways, less tensifying twist, because we don't want to create inflammation, right? So We're kind of on the, just a little bit under overdoing it here. And if it is overdoing it, you might bend the bottom leg, left leg quite a bit. Might feel easier for you. Head turns to the right. Okay, the repetition into rest, breath repetition helps you accomplish releasing. That from exhalation comes relaxation. Yeah, come back into center with your head. That didn't move very far, probably. And then we'll find a way to move the sand and the ball. And then we'll let the legs pattern so that they don't have anything between, right? They're kind of free floaters. But the idea is to get your body back to center, but also to get the feet to float. So you're going to hold the back of the legs. To get the feet to float, we're going to roll up, and then we'll take a couple blocks. Okay, those of you that are going to stay for this short little set here, we'll put our 2 blocks in front at the mid-height, and then you'll put your bolster on top. You may remember this pattern, but when you do get your blanket on top, I want you to roll it. I want you to have enough height underneath your feet, or your calves actually, so that your calves go on the blanket, not so much your feet. And then when you lower down, you want your calves on that blanket so the feet kind of float. Okay? Now, if the feet are floating, there likely will be less kind of distraction around the knees. So you're not trying to push down with your feet. You might have to slide a little bit back so that you do feel like they're kind of lifted. And then place a sandbag on the ribs and feel what part of the ribs the sand feels pressure, positioning, right? So you push it across, you might have to shake it out. And then as the hands rest besides your core line, let your head release back, closing your eyes. And then feel that connection of the sandbag to the breathing cycle. Now really guide the position of the sand. And you know, I feel when my arms are pinned this close, it's a little harder for me to let the ribs expand. So you might have to bring your arms out a little bit. So don't feel like you are defined by this version. If you have a version, bring your arms out and then continue that sensation of expanding and contracting. Yeah, this is how we'll end the practice. We'll get a feeling of that rhythm of expanding and settling into yourself. Now with those feet in more of that float, just keep them there. Feel the very base of the spine. And is it even on the right and the left side of the pelvis, or is it tilted on one side? Even if your sand is even as you know it, that balance, I want you to try to integrate the strength in your lower belly. If the legs are stretched this way, it's a little harder to access that area with knees bending, which is what we typically do. So when you slide the sand away, then get a feel for the cycle of pressure at the back of the pelvis and the hips, and then slide your feet onto that top blanket above your bolster. And then feel when the feet are on there, can you let your shoulders push back to the ground? So they're trying to experience reaching back just on their own without the arms doing the reach. And then bring one knee at a time in towards your chest, kind of on its own to start. Okay, and then reach the back of the legs with your arms to kind of hug them in. And then get a feeling of that belly breath. And just complete the whole cycle. Go simple, fairly swift. You'll roll to a side and then push yourself up. Take a blanket under your seat. And then when you get a feel of the hip lift, bring your hands to your thighs. So get a feel of the cross-leggedness. That kind of weaves the back of the pelvis to an opening, centering, and bring your hands up in front of the heart, bowing into your heart center. Surrender here. And let's breathe in just a moment, collective consciousness. Inhale, breathing in wellness, and exhale, bowing into your heart. I wish you wellness. Namaste. Thank you. Okay. Hope that went